Hello. Today I'm joined by Elisa Lo Blanco, who is a Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs Manager at Amiko, a digital health company. And they are fresh off achieving CE mark under the MDR, a major milestone for any MedTech innovator or startup. Elisa has been at the forefront of shaping Amiko's strategy, quality culture, and regulatory journey to a fully digital quality management and document management system. And today we're exploring Amiko's compliance journey, the decision to build an integrated electronic document management system on Atlassian Confluence, and all the lessons that Elisa can share with us and with all the other MedTech startups to scale safely and efficiently to bring their products out on the market and have a digital document management system. So thank you for joining me, Elisa.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoy being part of this interview. My name is Elisa Lo Blanco, and I'm the Quality Assurance and Regulatory Affairs Manager at Amiko. I'm responsible for ensuring that our processes, devices, and software products comply with all applicable quality and regulatory requirements. I also oversee the audits, compliance activities, and documentation management across the company.
Very cool. Looking forward to getting to know more of the secret recipe of how to become compliant. But you yourself, you moved from clinical engineering into MedTech quality and regulatory affairs. Can you tell us what keeps you passionate about quality management work?
Yes, of course. I started in clinical engineering, so my first perspective was very close to patients and to how medical technologies are used in real settings. When I moved in MedTech, I quickly realized that quality and regulatory affairs are the disciplines that ensure those technologies are safe, reliable, and truly usable. And that connection to real patient impact is what drew me in.
That's fantastic because a lot of engineers, I would say, especially software engineers, they don't have that touch, right? They don't
Yeah.
understand how their code could actually affect the patient safety. Having this background is definitely something amazing to have and to introduce these risks, I think, to the software engineers. For those who don't know your company, Amiko, could you describe a little bit about what Amiko is doing and the product that you have developed?
Yes, of course. Amiko provides regulated digital health technologies designed to enhance the management of chronic respiratory conditions for both patients and clinicians. Our platform integrates validated smart inhaler sensor and patient-facing mobile application and a clinical dashboard to deliver reliable, real-world insights that support ongoing therapy management. By improving the consistency and quality of inhaler use and supply healthcare professionals with actionable and device-generated data, we help strengthen adherence, optimize treatment decisions, and support better clinical outcomes.
And you just achieved CE mark. Congratulations. Can you share a little bit about what that milestone actually means for Amiko?
Yes, thank you. Achieving a CE marking is a major milestone for us. It means that our product meets all the safety, performance, and regulatory standards required for the European market. And for Amiko, this is not only a recognition of the quality and robustness of our technology, but also an important step toward expanding access to our solution and supporting more patients and clinicians across Europe.
Well done, you. But let's talk a little bit about this regulatory journey that you took. What were the first steps? What did you do first? The goal was to get a CE mark. Where did you start?
Yes, when we started our regulatory journey, the very first step was to understand how the transition from the former MDD framework to the MDR would impact our product. We were already MDD compliant and held the CE mark, but since our product was considered a legacy device, we needed to evaluate all the additional MDR requirements and all they apply to our update solution. From there, we mapped all applicable regulatory obligations and performed gap analysis across processes, technical documentation, and software development practices. And this allowed us to clearly identify what was already in place from our previous compliance effort and what needed to be built or strengthened in order to align with the MDR pathway.
You mentioned that you did a gap analysis. What types, other than MDR, of course, itself, what standards did you look at? What were you following that helped you make this gap analysis of where you are today and where do you need to go?
Yes, we worked with several frameworks, BU, MDR, of course, 2017-745, ISO 13485, of course, for QMS, and ISO 14971 for risk management. For software, we followed the ISO ST 62304 and 81001-5-1 for cybersecurity, for example, and the 62366 for usability engineering. Because our solution processes personal data, GDPR compliance was also essential. And in addition, the relevant MBCG guidelines and the AMII Agile guidance helped us interpret MDR requirements and align them with our Agile development approach.
Which one of these standards would be the most challenging for software engineers, do you think?
I think the 14971 for risk management, of course.
Why is that?
Because it's not so simple to link immediately the patient risk to what the development team is running. There is the need to involve the development team and to improve some mindsets in order to highlight the patient risk, and also that everything we do is done for patient safety, of course.
That's where your clinical engineering background is definitely useful, right?
Yes, maybe yes.
Cool. But other than risk management, what would you say were the biggest challenge in establishing a compliant quality management and document management system?
Yes, one of the biggest challenge was balancing the need for structure with the reality of fast-moving development environment. As a startup, we needed to stay agile, so finding the right compromise between compliance and complexity was essential. We had to implement processes that ensure regulatory robustness without slowing innovation or adding unnecessary overhead. Another challenge was also building the full set of documentation, from procedures to the technical file, while maintaining consistency across hardware, firmware, and software components. Creating clarity, training the team, and embedding a quality mindset in everyday activities were the key to overcome these challenges, let me say.
But let's say that you are in the very beginning as a startup and you understand that you need a quality management system. What is the point in which you understood that you need a digitalized quality management system?
We actually identified this need very early on. A more structured and digitalized QMS quickly became a prerequisite for building our MDR technical documentation and ensuring a smooth transition for the MDD framework to the MDR, of course. Even within our existing QMS, we had already identified areas of improvement, especially with the need for a solution that was fully compliant with the standards, properly validated, and capable of supporting electronic signatures or complete audit trail. As our project grew, this became even more evident. Managing documentation manually would not have granted the level of traceability or control or efficiency required. A digital QMS allows us to streamline workflows and maintain audit readiness and support the team in much more reliable and scalable way.
And it's always easier to trace and search things if it's digital, right? But many MedTechs are still using Word for quality management, system documentation, Excel for risk management, or SharePoint. What made you consider Jira and Confluence instead?
Yes, we wanted a system that could support both compliance and the way our teams actually work. Traditional document tools are great for static document, but they tend to become hard to manage as soon as you deal with versioning, approvals, and constant iteration. As a manufacturer of medical device software, we were already using Jira extensively. So being able to continue working with that environment and complement it with the Confluence allowed us to adopt the SoftComply Document Manager without disrupting our workflows or the way the teams collaborate. Instead of introducing a completely new system, we enhanced the tools we already rely on, making the transition smoother and much more efficient.
So your software engineering was already agile. Did you see any benefits? And if so, what benefits were there to using agile development tools in your regulatory compliance processes?
At the beginning, we actually start to invest some time in understanding how regulatory requirements and agile development tools could work together in a way that made sense for us. It was immediate. We needed to adapt our workflows and find the right balance between structure and agility. But once this alignment was in place, the benefits became very clear. Using agile tools now allow us to keep activities continually tracked and up to date, which means that we no longer accumulate documentation or compliance backlog, and everything moves forward in parallel with development rather than after it.
Yeah, a lot of companies would say that their software development is using agile development tools like Jira, but the quality management and regulatory affairs are still sitting somewhere far away in different tool sets. Most of the time, companies want to use the same tools. Did that fact that your software team was already using Jira influence your decision to actually build your quality management system on top of Confluence, which is the seamless integrated wiki tool for Jira?
Yes, our engineering team was already working with Jira, and this played a major role in our decision. It meant we could build our compliance and documentation processes on top of tools the team already knew and used every day. This reduced the learning curve, avoided introducing completely new systems, and helped make quality and regulatory activities a natural extension of the existing workflow rather than something separate or disruptive.
We have seen a lot of companies whose quality and compliance manager is sitting somewhere far away and facing people with their Excel spreadsheets or whatnot. So having everything in one system is definitely something that is best aligned to get your compliance also into the product development. So that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
You were already on Jira and Confluence, and you have decided to build your quality management system on Confluence. But how did you come to choose SoftComply Document Manager as opposed to any other tools that are on Confluence or building one yourself?
Yes, since our teams were already working extensively with Jira, we wanted a solution that could integrate seamlessly into an ecosystem rather than introducing completely new platforms. SoftComply Document Manager provides exactly that. An electronic QMS and document manager built on top of Atlassian tools, validated, compliant with the relevant standards, and ready to support the MDI requirements. Building something internally would have required a significant time, validation effort, and maintenance, of course. A self-compliant document manager gave us a robust and compliant solution immediately without disrupting our workflows. And since we work in Agile, at the end of each sprint, we often release something official to production. And this means the releases and versions evolve very quickly. So we needed a solution capable of managing documentation, baselines, and versioning without errors, even in a fast-paced development environment.
Thanks for choosing us. Was there, other than these things, was there anything else that aligned with the way Amiko is working and the way we SoftComply provided the document manager?
Yes, what really aligned with our needs was SoftComply Document Manager's ability to bring together regulatory rigor and the flexibility required by a software company working in Agile. I think it's a solution built with a deep understanding of medical device standards, but also with a clear awareness of how development team actually work.
Thank you. And in terms of integration, usually when you get a new tool, it always takes some time to integrate that app or tool into your existing teamwork workflows. How was it with the SoftComply Document Manager for you?
Yes, at the beginning, we needed some time for the internal setup, let me say. We spent this phase understanding how to structure the workflows in the most streamlined and efficient way so that the new process will support compliance without creating unnecessary overhead for the development team. Once this was defined, the integration itself was quite smooth. So Complies App fit into Jira and Confluence. So after aligning the configuration with our internal processes, the system became part of the quality day operations, let me say.
In terms of document control and document approvals, SoftComply Document Manager comes with several ready-made workflows for document approval, like templates. Did you use those from out of box, or did you have to customize a lot to match and meet your process requirements?
Yes, the implementation process started with an internal setup, as already said, where we focus on understanding how to adapt the SoftComply tools to our way of working. It actually became a great opportunity to involve the development team in defining a shared workflow, one that truly suited their needs while still meeting all regulatory requirements, of course. We mapped our existing processes together, identify what needed to be adjusted for compliance and aligned to the workflow, so it will be both practical for the team and robust from a regulatory perspective.
How easy was it for the other teams, like engineering or clinical teams, to actually understand and learn about Document Manager? How was the learning curve for them?
Yes, considering that we are a startup, mostly of the resources are part of the development team. The learning curve was quite manageable. Even though we had designed the workflow together, I still delivered dedicated training sessions to walk everyone through the main functionalities of SoftComply Document Manager and how the new process would work in practice. While a full user manual was available, we decided to create an internal work instruction focused only on the key activities relevant for our team.
I think that sounds amazing that you did the trainings as well, because a lot of times we hear that when you don't do that, everybody else is distant from document management and quality management work. So best to have it all together. But were there any surprises, any moments that completely took you by surprise when you rolled out the document manager in Confluence?
Yes, there was one in particular. It happened when it became clear to developers who are the main contributors to our self-inclined documentation. Our versioning was handled in the system and what it really meant to have a document in draft versus approved status. They realized that once a document is approved, it became locked and cannot be modified, and any correction must be made in a new version rather than by changing the past. This was an important insight for all of us. It highlighted how quality and regulatory requirements are designed to always look forward, ensuring full traceability and integrity of documentation. And it helped the team understand the logic behind the controller documentation in a regulated environment. So it was very helpful.
And it probably also meant that afterwards, when their review time came, they actually did start reviewing properly, because they knew that after that, when the document is approved and looked, there is no other chance.
Yeah, exactly.
They had to devote themselves to the review process. Did SoftComply Document Manager improve your compliance with the ISO 13485 when we talk about control documentation, versioning, approvals? Anything in particular there that you felt that this app itself already helps the compliance process?
Yes, we already had a QMS in place, which we previously managed on a SharePoint, but the SoftComply Document Manager allowed us to significantly improve the level of compliance. Having a validated system made a big difference, especially in how to manage document versions and approvals. Before, versioning errors could easily happen. Now the process is controlled, traceable, and fully aligned with ISO 13485 expectations. Before adopting SoftComply Document Manager, managing the evolution of our documentation baseline required a lot of manual effort and made it easy to introduce mistakes. With Document Manager, these processes became much more controlled and transparent. Now, personally, I can focus on the history, clearly describing what has changed from one version to the next, exactly as required by the ISO 13485, without worrying about losing track of versions or approvals. So it was incredible.
That's good to hear. And in terms of deliverables, I mean, in document management and quality management system, we have a lot of documents that auditors want to check upon, DHF, specific SOPs. Were there anything that SoftComply Document Manager was especially helpful in putting together?
Yes, since we already had a QMS structure, as already said, and a complete technical file in place, Our goal was not to tear everything down and rebuild it from scratch. Instead, we wanted to keep what was working well and improve what needed more control or clarity. In this sense, having a flexible tool was essential. SoftComply Document Manager allowed us to create a structure that mirrored what we already had while announcing it with proper version control, traceability, and standardized workflow. This meant that we could migrate our documentation into a system that preserved our existing organization but strengthened it with the complex features we were missing. It gave us continuity without losing the benefits of a more robust and controlled environment.
But you mentioned validation a few times, so that the SoftComply Document Manager is validated. Can you describe how auditors reacted to you having a quality management system on Confluence Cloud? Because validation is really important, but having a cloud-based quality management system means that you have to have a validation regularly done, right? Or did they ask about those validation documents for cloud or for SoftComply Document Manager from you in the audit?
Oh, the auditors were positively impressed. SoftComply Document Manager's validation package helped a lot, and the auditors appreciated having that available also during audit. And they've also asked us to complement it with our internal evidence to show how we verify the effectiveness of the validated tool in our environment. But they were very happy.
So how did you do that? How do you build the evidence internally for that?
Yes, we decided to have an internal checklist and to highlight the activities we usually do in our daily work, fulfilling this checklist and giving the evidence with a smooth validation, let me say.
But let's talk a little bit about how having a good document management system can have a positive impact on collaboration inside your team and efficiency in working. Did you see any improvement of team collaboration across engineering, quality, product development, and clinical teams when you're working with the same integrated document management system in Confluence?
Yes, after the initial setup and the analysis phase, SoftComply has become almost transparent for the team. They can continue working in the tools they use every day, like Jira, GitHub, writing requirements and functional specification directly there. And Confluence documents now capture this information automatically from those sources, and so the development team is only involved with the signature or approval is needed. But now we have a single shared repository, our one point of truth, and this made cross-functional collaboration much easier.
That's basically why we integrated everything into Atlassian tools.
Yes.
But can you tell me a little bit more of what particular tasks became easier after you adopted SoftComply Document Manager?
Managing document versions and approvals is now far more controlled, with no longer risk mixing drafts and approved documents. And maintaining the documentation baseline has improved a lot. Instead of manually tracking change, I can focus on describing what actually changed from one version to the next, while the system takes care of structure and control.
That's fantastic. Make it a little bit easier. Okay, but let's go to the lessons learned then. When you look back to the journey that you have had in Amiko, is there anything you would do differently if you were to start again the compliance journey there?
Looking back, I would probably formalize some processes a bit earlier, even while keeping the flexibility typical of a startup. In the beginning, you often try to postpone structure to avoid slowing the team down. But in reality, having lightweight by clear processes from the start makes everything easier later, especially during MDR transition.
How much convincing did you have to do with the product team to focus on quality and document management from the beginning?
Yes, they were forced because we need to reach the goal and yes, to reach the CE market. They were forced, but at the beginning they were a lot disoriented. But when you involve them and explain the reason why, all the requirements, they started to become involved, much more involved in the processes. Everything became smoother. Yes.
That's good. And what advice would you give to other digital health companies or medical device companies who are preparing for their CE mark?
Yes, my main advice is to start structuring your documentation and process early, even in a lightweight form. Many digital apps or MedTech postpone this step, but having a clear foundation from the beginning saves a lot of rework later. And another important point is choosing tools and workflows that fit the way your team already works. And finally, involve the team early and explain the why behind the regulatory requirements. When people understand the logic, adoption became much smoother.
But were there any misconceptions you had before starting the process? Something that you believed in is important in quality management system, and then as you went through the compliance journey, you realized that actually this can change, this can be different.
Yes, at the beginning, I saw that implementing regulatory requirements would inevitably slow the team down. Over time, I realized that if you design processes around how the team already works, especially in agile environment, compliance can actually become part of the workflow instead of an obstacle. So
Do,
it was
do you believe that medical devices would be safer when you start quality and compliance mindset earlier on?
Yes, of course, because the development team awareness about the regulatory requirements increase also their sensibility and their feelings about the patient, and also so they take care about patient safety as
Okay.
first, and also writing functional specification. They already know what's the goal, what's intended use, and also that the patient is the main relevant actor when they write something.
The critical
So
stakeholder.
yes,
Sure.
yes.
Yeah. When you think of medical device startups, I mean, you've seen a few. What do you see as the most common mistakes that they make when they approach regulatory compliance?
Yes, I think one of the most common mistakes is starting too late. Many startups or medtech focus entirely on development and only think about compliance when product is almost finished. At that point, the amount of rework can be overwhelming. And another mistake is try to copy process from large companies, and those systems are often too heavy for a small, fast moving team and end up creating unnecessary overhead instead of helping. And finally, treating quality as something separate from development is a big pitfall. Compliance works best when it grows together with the product and becomes part of the daily workflow, not an activity handled at the end.
But now that you guys are CE marked, are you all done now with regulatory and compliance, or what do you have to do next? Are there any next priorities for Amiko?
Yes, now that we achieved the CE marking, our priorities shift towards strengthening our post-market activities and ensuring that our process remain robust as the product evolves. But another important priority is maintaining and further optimizing our QMS so it scales with the team as we grow. And of course, we are also looking ahead to additional regulatory pathways, including preparing for potential market expansion outside Europe, which means align with FDR requirements and other international standards.
You mentioned that it's very important early on to start working together with the compliance and quality team and the product development team. Is that something that is really important only at the beginning when you start building this quality management system, or does this kind of teamwork change as the product evolves? What do you think?
Yes, I see quality and engineering becoming even more integrated as the product evolves. For us, the most effective approach has been treating quality not as a separate function, but as something that grows together with development. As we introduce new features or expand our product, engineering will continue to work in the usual agile development, while quality ensures that every change is reflected in documentation, risk files, and verification activities. So, all within the same ecosystem.
So you basically keep on working iteratively, both in product development as well as regulatory and compliance.
Yes.
Thank you so much for covering the Amiko story. I also wanted to talk a little bit about your freelancing work that you're doing. So you recently started supporting Southern Italian startups. Just wondering what motivated you to take this step?
Yes, what motivated me was the desire to give something back in the place I came from. Southern Italy is full of talent, creativity, and the people with great ideas. But sometimes the ecosystem lacks of the structure or regulatory awareness needed to turn those ideas into real products. And after gaining experience in different industries and in MedTech, I felt I could support young teams by helping them avoiding common mistakes and build solid foundation from the beginnings. And for me, it's not just about compliance. It's about empowering people, making complex topics understandable, and showing that even in highly regulated sectors, innovation is absolutely possible. So freelancing became a way to stay connected to my roots and contribute to a growing community of innovators in the South.
That's very sweet because we all want somebody to help us improve our health as well, right? In terms of
Yes.
medical devices. But you mentioned that you have experience in different industries. So you worked in pharma, railway signaling, and now medical devices. What parts of these experiences would you say you rely mostly on when you advise startups?
Yes, what I rely on most is the ability to bring together structure, the safety culture, and practicality. From pharma, I learned the importance of documented evidence, robustness in processes, and the discipline of quality by design. From the railway signaling, I gained a deep understanding of safety critical system, risk management, and the mindset that even small details can have a huge consequences. A mindset that translates perfectly into medtech. That for medical devices, I learned how to make all this compatible with fast-moving team, agile development, and continuous iteration. So when I advise startups, I combine these three perspectives: the rigor of pharma, the safety discipline of railway, and the agility of software-driven medtech. It helps create processes that are compliant and safe, but still realistic and scalable for a young company.
Sounds like you have the perfect combination of experiences required. So when you support those startups, you probably see a lot of the similar things, like similar problems that they have. What would be the first QMS gaps that you typically see in startups?
Yes, some of the challenges I see in startups are the same ones I've seen in large companies. Quality is it often treated as separate function, something that has to be there, has to be done, rather than something integrated into the team's daily work. Because of these processes may exist on paper, but are not fully embedded in how people actually operate. So one of the first priorities is working side by side with the team to shape processes around the real causes and build awareness of the quality and regulatory requirements that apply to their work.
And that's probably quite challenging to bring from outside this kind of culture of quality and safety, particularly to understand that quality is there not just to fill the papers, but to make the devices safe.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a huge change of mindset.
Exactly, exactly. When we talked earlier about document approval, you mentioned something really interesting. This once you approve something, you cannot go back and review or change this document because it's already locked down. So you must always keep moving forward. Can you explain this mindset a little bit and why is it so essential for medical device development?
Yes, in MedTech, once a document or the deliverable is approved, it became part of the official record of the device. It's design history, it's risk analysis, it's safety evidence. You can't simply go back and change an approved document because doing so will break traceability and compromise the integrity of documentation. It's something need to be corrected or updated. You always create a new version and move forward. This mindset is essential in regulated environments because it ensures accountability and protects patient safety. Implementing the document manager really helped our team understand this principle in practice. Seeing how approved documents become locked and how new version must be created made the forward-moving logic of quality much more tangible and intuitive for people.
And when you say traceability, do you mean the fact that if there is a risk that realizes that you can go back and see where that happened, or is that the type of traceability that you mean?
Yes, all of this, and I suggest the team always to initiate non-conformance and to trace the mistake, not to blame someone, but to improve and to put
Learn from
in
it.
our process. Yes, to learn from
Mm.
it,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And in your experience, you mentioned you have seen very document heavy legacy systems as well as the lightweight digital document management systems. Why does starting digital make a difference for a MedTech?
Yes, starting digital makes a huge difference because it allows us to build structure, traceability, and compliance in your process from day one without adding unnecessary overhead. Legacy systems are often document heavy, so update and prone to versioning errors. In MedTech, where every change must be traceable and every version matters, this quickly became a bottleneck.
Okay. And when we talk about these digital document management systems, is there anything in particular why you would suggest building this document management system directly on Confluence Cloud instead of, for example, a separate standalone tool? Why would you recommend Confluence for that?
Yes, I recommended building an electronic mess directly in Confluence, for example, using SoftComply Document Manager, because many regulatory requirements are already embedded and operationalized in Confluence. This means that the user are naturally guided in implementing them, even if they are not regulatory experts. For example, configuration management and the creation and the maintenance of the documentation baseline to essential regulatory requirements are supported by the system by design. It simplifies adoption, reduces errors, and assures that the system stay aligned with the regulatory expectations while remaining easy for teams to use.
And in addition to these elements, was there anything in particular that's personally favored the soft-comply document management approach for Amiko or for other medtechs that you would say that, okay, that's why I like it?
Yes, when I realized that we could keep working on Jira and GitHub and have Confluence automatically capture and control the documentation behind the scenes, it became clear that this approach truly supports how modern medtech companies operate. And the fact that everything is validated, traceable, and aligned with the medical device standards gave me the confidence that we weren't just improving efficiency, we were strengthening compliance in a reliable, scalable way. Definitely.
And when building your quality management, a document management system in Confluence Cloud, are there any specific requirements from the MDR 13485 or any other of the standards that you need to comply with that became a little bit easier to manage and meet?
Yes, first, all the elements related to document control, versioning, approvals, signatures, and retention are handled automatically with directly supports ISO 13485 clause 4.2, for example. And it also simplifies design and development documentation. So MDR Annex 2 or ISO 13484 clause 7.3 because the requirements, task, risk, and verification activities all live in the same ecosystem and can link it directly. And finally, maintaining traceability across requirements, test risks, and software change, a core MDR expectation, becomes much more intuitive because the system updates these links in real time.
And we very often talk about traceability in medical device document management. And we say that when you're doing, for example, risk management in Excel, before the audit comes in, you start to check the traces, the links between requirements, risks, and tests, and so on. This audit preparation is a huge thing for medical device companies or any safety critical regulated company that goes through audits. Does this kind of digital document management system also ease the audit preparation process? Does it make it a bit faster? Can you sleep a little better, perhaps, before the audit comes in?
Yes, of course, because when every document is versioned, traceable, and linked to the right evidence, you don't have to prepare for an audit, but you are audit ready by default. And having a controlled system means you are no longer searching for the latest version, reconciling inconsistencies, or rebuilding history at the last minute, but everything is already there. Who approved what, when it was changed, and why it was changed. And this reduces stress, avoid errors, and makes audits much, absolutely.
Being ready all the time. So let's say that you are helping a medical device startup in southern Italy. And the founder of the startup says that they are looking at two different systems. One is a very big, expensive electronic quality management system, a standalone one. And then you have the Confluence-Based lightweight digital system. What would you tell that founder which one to choose and why?
For a startup that develops software and already works with the Atlassian suite, Jira or GitHub, using a Confluence-based document manager is extremely effective. When I joined the company, I actually ran a benchmarking exercise comparing different electronic QMS options. But the SoftComply Document Manager came out as the best cost-benefit solution by far. It was compliant, validated, and fully integrated with the tools that the team already use every day. So we did our best.
All right, but let's look into the future a bit. There is a lot of AI in almost every tool these days, which of course brings with itself some additional validation requirements and work effort. But just wanted to ask you, where do you see quality management tools evolving in the future when we talk about adding AI or any other automation really to regulated software?
Yes, I see two main directions. First, the QMS itself will need to evolve to support the inclusion of AI inside medical devices. Because with the AI Act coming into force, we will need to structure ways to manage model training, data quality, transparency, monitoring, and all the life cycle controls required for the AI-based functions. And these elements will have to become part of the QMS framework, just design controls or risk management are today. Then the second is that QMS tools will starting incorporating AI to improving the way teams work. AI can help detect inconsistencies, flag missing links, suggest improvements, and accelerate compliance activities. So instead of being just document repositories, QMS platform will become more proactive, helping teams maintaining quality and compliance with greater speed and accuracy.
And you mentioned already before that one of the things that you did before you implemented a digital document management system was to really set the processes and workflows up in your company. That will probably have a very big impact also when you add AI, right?
Yes, I would say that feeling overwhelmed is completely normal. Every MedTech startup experiences that at the beginning, yes, you can feel overwhelmed. What really helps is breaking the final objective into smaller, so intermediate steps and progressing through marginal gains. You don't need to build everything at once. There is also an important principle of proportionality. Your QMS should reflect the size of your company and the maturity of your business. This means focusing first on the essential requirements and ones you simply cannot operate without, of course, and when gradually expanding the system over time through continuous improvement.
We talked about quality culture and safety culture, like how it is one of the first things that you want to bring to startups in medical device in southern Italy. Where do you see the biggest opportunity for improving that safety and quality culture in Europe?
I think one of the biggest opportunities is continuing move forward and toward a more unified and harmonized regulatory system across Europe, and ideally globally. Tools like UDAMED already reflect this ambition. A single centralized database that reduces fragmentation and avoids each country introducing its own additional layers over time. For example, in Italy, the national database will no longer need to be fed once the first UDAMED modules became mandatory in the coming month. And this kind of simplification is exactly what improves the quality culture.
If you had to summarize the experience that you had with us, SoftComply, in 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say?
Yes, SoftComply was a company we discovered on our own through benchmarking, but the quality of the support we received from the one quickly built our trust. It proved to be a validated, reliable, and highly practical partner for integrating compliance in the way our team actually works.
Thank you. What surprised you most during our collaboration?
When you start using an application, there's always a learning curve, and having that level of availability and guidance made a big difference. Every time we encountered a difficulty or needed clarification, the support was there, timely, practical, and very patient, let me say.
Thank you. If you met a MedTech founder who asked you help for preparing their first MDR audit, what would be your top 3 recommendations for them?
Okay, first, I will train the team on what an audit really is. For many people, it's the first time and they imagine it's something stressful. In reality, audits are professional conversation between peers. So understanding the structure of an audit, the types of questions and expected behaviors helps the team feel confident and prepared. Second, I strongly recommend running a mock audit before the real one. It's one of the most effective ways to identify gaps, inconsistencies, or unclear areas in advance. It's much better for you to find these issues internally rather than having an external auditor discover them. And third, ensure that your system is organized, traceable, and easy to navigate. Documents versioned correctly, approvals clear, and evidence easy to retrieve. But above all, make sure your documentation tells a coherent story about your product, from the user needs to the risk, the design decisions, the verification, and the clinical evidence.
That's very good that you mentioned documentation because the next question is exactly about that. The one thing most startups go is, oh my God, I have to document everything. What is your wish that every startup understood early on about documentation?
Yes, I wish every startup or MedTech organization understood that documentation is not paperwork or a bureaucratic obligation someone invented. It's the way we prove what we do and how we build our product. It's evidence of our decisions, our design choices, our risk mitigation, and our safety commitments. So when the team see documentation as a part of the product and not something separate from it, everything becomes much easier. Quality improves, audit goes smoother, and the whole development process become more reliable.
Absolutely. That's very well put. When you mention quality and safety culture, what is exactly that quality culture that you are trying to build in young MedTech teams?
Yes, for me, quality culture starts with explaining things, not just asking for them. When people understand why something needs to be done, especially in a high regulated sector like MedTech, it becomes much easier to adopt the right behaviors. I try to help teams see quality not as a set of rules imposed from the outside, but as a part of building a safer, reliable product.
That's lovely. And a very final message that you would give to any medical device company that is in the process of evaluating different digital document management tools. Is there anything that you would suggest them?
Yes, my advice is to choose a tool that truly fits the way your team works. In MedTech, compliance is essential, but if the system adds too much complexity, it won't be adopted. Look for a validated solution that brings structure and traceability while remaining flexible and easy to integrate into your existing workflows.
And even if it is validated, the SoftComply Document Manager, the company will still have to do some validating internally. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
But it will be easier with the validation documentation from the vendor.
Yes, of course. It's very easy
Mhm.
because you can do also doing and preparing a checklist.
And you would help them.
I can help, of course.
Very good. Thank you so much, Elisa, for joining me today for the interview. It's
Thank you to
always
you.
good to spread the knowledge, especially as we are very similar in what we want to do, helping medical device companies to get their products on the market faster and with integrated tools.
Yes,
So thank
yes,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.